Welcome to this episode of Let's Talk, where we focus on the practical implications and applications of the knowledge that is shared in some of the most talked about sessions here at Monaco Congress. In this Let's Talk, we talk about the timing of implant placement. When is immediate, early, or late the better option? My name is Gerrit Heijkoop, and I'm very honored and pleased to be joined by the chairs of that session. From Portugal, Helena Francisco. Welcome, Helena.
Hi, Gerrit.
And from Belgium, Professor Jan Cosyn. Welcome.
Hello, Gerrit.
It's an honor to have you with me. You just walked out of that session. You just came from stage. This conference is all about the timing in implant dentistry. Well, this is the most direct reference to that theme, right? When are we placing the implant? Why is it important to spend 90 minutes on stage to talk about this here?
I can start. So I believe that it is important. Timing is very important. It actually is the topic, the main topic of this Congress. So when you extract a tooth, you need to decide if you're going to place an implant on the same day that you extract the tooth, or if you need to wait. It can be like 4 to 6 weeks when we call it early implant placement, or you can go for a delayed approach with the help of some socket preservation or value-rich preservation. So it is very, very important to know when is the best timing for us to place our implant.
And Jan, what are the key drivers in making that decision?
Well, I think that a comprehensive diagnosis is very important. So you absolutely need a CBCT prior to tooth extraction. That will guide you through the process of decision-making here. And of course, it can be used as a tool to communicate the decision or the proposal with your patient.
Yeah. Is it as simple that if this site is fit for an implant in terms of hard and soft tissue, we can go for immediate? If anything else needs to happen, we end up in delayed, or is that too simplified?
I think you're a smart guy. I think that is the right answer, at least today.
Yeah.
If you had posed or asked me this question 10 years ago, maybe it would have been a different answer. But we see this in the field that if there is a possibility to go for a fast treatment protocol, and we can do this in a predictable way, that is the way to go, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Helena, why is this? When you say, well, a few years back it might have been different, why are we working towards a more clear decision on perhaps immediate?
Because nowadays we have more evidence. Probably 10 years ago we didn't have a lot, and Jan Cosyn and his team back at Ghent University, they have been doing a lot of research on this topic. So currently we have more evidence and we are more secure to do these type of treatments with predictability, having always in mind that the patient is the center.
Mm-hmm. Let's dive into that session. What were some of the surprising takeaways that you yourselves walked away with?
That of course any case can be treated in many different ways. So there is not one right answer, and I think that's wonderful. We don't have to do the same thing. Mm-hmm. We can choose, and we can communicate. We can consider advantages and disadvantages, and in the end, it's the patient that will make the decision. But that's the beauty of our profession, I think. Mm-hmm. We can converge to a main same way of thinking, but in the end, you usually have multiple options, which is beautiful.
Exactly.
And I hear you say it's in the end the patient's decision. Is this a patient-driven decision tree?
Not fully, but at least the patients should be included in that decision. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because, if you don't opt for an immediate placement, the consequence is usually that they end up with a removable partial denture. Mm-hmm. The patient doesn't care about the marginal bone or whatever, these variables that we tend to value, but he or she wants to know, what is my interim prosthesis? What is my rescue treatment at the time?
Exactly.
And that is something to consider.
And adding to that, nowadays we do evidence-based implantology and dentistry, and not only the best evidence available is in the same package, but also the dentist expertise and also the patient preference. So these three things need to be combined in order to have the best treatment plan for that patient, because each patient is unique and the the same solution does not fit all.
Exactly. So that's one of the key takeaways of this session that you took away, Jan. And the other thing that raised an eyebrow with you, Helena, is like, that's interesting. That's why I came to Monaco.
Oh, I think the one of the first things, I think the topic for Monaco of timing, I think it's very important because nowadays we are very pressured by our patients because they want things not for today, for yesterday. They want things faster, and everything has to be for today, not for tomorrow. And sometimes we need to sit down and explain the patient that there is biology and there's the healing, and biology is here to stay, is not going to change. So we need to respect that. So timing is very interesting topic, but sometimes we need also to slow down and not run the race in order to not respect biology.
Can you go one level deeper and give me an example of those sometimes? Like tell me your story that perhaps from own experience or her experience where things go wrong if we don't respect biology.
Actually, I was trained to be very respectful to biology and respect how the patients heal. But sometimes you get complications from other offices where, for example, an immediate implant placement was done, and probably the conditions were not the ideal for immediate implant placement. Sometimes the patient comes in and the implant is loose after a couple of days after the immediate implant placement. So we need to treatment plan and choose the right indication for that patient. If there's no indication for immediate placement, probably you need to go for the other two approaches, the early implant placements or the late implant placement with alveolar preservation.
So do I hear you correctly? You say when there's no indication for immediate.
Yeah.
So that's almost the other way around, right?
Exactly.
In general, you want to go slow unless there's an indication for immediate. Is that the takeaway?
Depends on the case. I think we cannot generalize, Gerrit. We cannot.
I know. Depends on the case.
I know it's easier for the audience, but we cannot generalize. Sometimes immediate is the indication, and you should go for the immediate. Other times you need to go slow. You have an infection. You need to take out the tooth. Jan showed a beautiful case, how he approached the case, and in that situation you needed to extract, graft the area, wait 6 months in order you are able to place an implant.
What was the story, Jan?
Well, it was a case with a huge apical pathology, a huge fenestration, and no bone at the apical and palatal aspect to anchor an immediate implant.
Okay.
And in immediate implant placement, we can talk about a lot of things.
Yeah.
But there is only one rule set in stone.
You need bone, right?
You need bone.
For osseointegration.
Yeah, but in the exact position.
Yeah.
Meaning that you need to be able to anchor an implant in the ideal prosthetic position. If that cannot be done, you have to omit the concept.
Exactly.
That's one thing that people should really remember. So that's why take the CBCT. If you cannot fulfill that criterion, forget about immediate placement, and then you, in the clinical decision-making process, you consider other options.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the way I do it.
Exactly. The bone sets the tone.
The bone sets the tone.
Ooh, nice.
Exactly.
Helena Francisco. The bone sets
it's
the
not.
tone.
No,
It's
actually,
not yours.
No, it's not. David Garber's and the Atlanta team. The bone sets the tone. The tissue is the issue, but the pros is the boss.
Okay. We learn nice sayings in these last talk. Tissue is the issue we got yesterday already.
Yes.
Bone set the tone. The process is the boss. Okay, clear. The reason why I acted a bit surprised is I thought we were starting from we always go for immediate unless it's not feasible, and then we go to the late. But in fact, you just said let's flip that. You only go for immediate if there's an indication, and if you have a choice, you might want to go slow.
Yeah.
Right? Is that what do you say?
Yeah. You know, everyone has its way to approach.
So there's also a personal preference of the
I think there is a
professional.
personal preference. What I feel comfortable with in the field, also in the scientific field, is that people that were reluctant in doing immediate placement in the past, I see them doing it today. So I feel confident and comfortable with that everybody is at least trying this concept. given the knowledge that we have on that in the past 10 years, it has exploded.
Yeah.
And there are studies even looking into the number of studies in immediate placement. It's the most investigated topic in implant dentistry today.
Exactly.
So that means something.
It means something, and I can imagine from a patient-driven perspective, you don't want all these follow-up appointments, and the sooner the better. The temporary solution is scary or uncertain. So I understand all that. Obviously, I realize we are talking here about implants. Are we talking single implants? Are we talking aesthetic zone, posterior? Are we multiple edentulous? I mean, I can imagine all the complexity of the case also has a big impact on your opportunities or options in terms of timing. Was that talked about in the session, or what can we learn about that?
I think the main thing is treatment planning. You need to treatment plan well the case. And of course, speaking about the aesthetic zone, the patient phenotype, it is a thick or if it is thin, the thickness of the buccal plate. Mariano spoke about that.
Yeah, Mariano Sanz had a talk about when immediate placement.
Actually, it's not Mariano Sanz. Oh, Mariano Sanz, not Sons. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
I'm sorry about that.
Sons.
Sons.
I was like,
accent, I'm sorry.
Was on my schedule.
Because in the past I made that confusion. I thought it was his son, but it's
he's
not.
also in implant dentistry. Yeah, of course.
Exactly. Now I lost what I was talking about.
No, so when you talked about immediate in the aesthetic zone, the phenotype,
there's a lot of factors that we need to take in consideration. The smile line, and of course the expertise of the clinician, because you need to have experience in order to perform it correctly. You need to place your implant in a prosthodontically correct position. Otherwise, if you do that in the wrong position in the aesthetic zone, it can be a really nightmare.
I hear it a lot in these EAO congresses. You need to be an expert, you need to learn. What I start to wonder, okay, so I'm at the beginning of my implant dentistry career. I feel comfortable doing single implants. I feel comfortable doing posterior, maybe a little bit more complex. How do I gain my experience in this aesthetic zone? How do I organize this learning curve? Any?
Yeah, you should stick to some basic rules. And an important one has been highlighted by Mariano. At the very end, he told, well, computer-assisted implant surgery, so guided surgery, is really an asset. It is a must in immediate implant placement. And I would add, even for experienced surgeons. Because the thing is, I can place a perfect implant freehand, but that's not the question. The question is, if I do 100 cases, can I guarantee that in 100 cases I can have a perfect implant positioning freehand? Absolutely not. And that's the thing. So I need that tool, and everybody needs that tool, to guarantee a perfect position. Because if you don't have that, I agree with you, it is a nightmare. So there are a lot of pitfalls involved in immediate placement, and everybody should stick to some basic rules. And it gets complicated, and you need to be able to perform soft tissue grafting, and et cetera, et cetera. You need to have some prosthodontic skills. And if you don't comply with all these things, I don't think that you can do immediate placement up to the highest level.
Yeah. And I sense you're very strong on this, Jan. Is there any frustration in the field?
No. I just want to make an important point here. I need to underline that the implant position is of key importance, and you need to avoid the failure zone. Because if you place the implant, you have one critical zone, which is the safe zone, and there the implant has to be installed.
Exactly.
But very easily it comes into the danger zone or even that failure zone, and then you run into trouble without.
But I also hear you say very strongly, in nowadays, and we're talking here in Monaco 2025, perhaps we should get rid of freehand altogether?
No.
I know we're stepping on toes of perhaps some other generations, but it seemed to be the case, right? You say, like, especially in the aesthetic zone.
Yeah. In aesthetic zone.
Don't take risks.
No.
Exactly. I on the one hand agree, but on the other, but like a pilot needs to know how to land a plane without the automatic pilot. So if you're performing an immediate implant placement and you have a surgical guide, that's perfect. But imagine that surgical guide is not well constructed.
Yeah.
That happens. There are mistakes by the lab. Are you going to tell the patient, no, come tomorrow because my surgical guide is not working and I cannot place the implant. Oh, I don't know how to place the implant without a surgical guide. So you need to know how to do it hand-free as a compliment.
You need basic skills.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
As a backup.
As a backup.
Yeah,
exactly.
that makes total sense. Okay, so that's the nuance why we do a let's talk.
Exactly.
We take a black and white statement and we say, okay, so where's the nuance? Anything else that you walk away with from this session?
I think we had a really interesting discussions, especially on the part of the biomaterials, because we had a lot of questions from the audience. And one of them, not one of them, but like 10 of them were about what type of biomaterials. In all the 3 speakers, they agreed with the xenograft or the mixture with the xenograft with autogenous bone, especially when you have big defects.
And that's new or because...
It's confirmatory.
Right?
Yes.
I thought we were there for a while.
But Mariano also jumped a bit into the future. You know, for an autogenous graft, you need an extra surgical site. This is what we do today, but it's not an ideal solution.
No.
So I'm sure that in the next 10 years to come, we need some inductive materials to avoid that second surgical site. I fully agree with that. But
Yeah, I
Jan,
agree.
when you say inductive materials?
that means that a graft material induces bone formation. What we now have is a xenograft, but it's osteoconductive. So it is merely a scaffold that allows bone formation, but it does not actively induce it.
So can you tell a little bit more about these materials? Are they autogenous from another part and then...
Bone morphogenetic proteins are, for instance, osteoinductive proteins. That could be added.
And that is the future of these materials, or is that being used today already?
That is being used, but not on a big scale, I would say.
Yes, BMPs are being used, not on a big scale. Actually, 20 years ago when I was trained, we used that, but they were so expensive that we stopped using it. But I think that I agree with Jan, that will be a future not to have something autogenous, which increases the morbidity, but also have materials that can do everything, so we don't have to worry. But we're still not there.
No.
When you speak about the choice of biomaterials, is there a big difference whether we talk about immediate versus delayed? Because I can imagine in delayed, you have much more time and freedom.
Actually, that was one of the questions that I asked the 3, but all of them responded the same.
Okay.
Xenograft or xenograft with some autogenous bone.
That's interesting because I
Or
actually...
immediate, early, or
all of
the
them.
delay.
Indifferent. That also simplifies life a bit, of course.
And in the end, the biology is the same. You know, you just combine healing, but biology behind an alveolar ridge preservation procedure or an immediate implant placement with socket grafting, yes, it's the same.
In the end, you want bone to grow.
Yeah.
That's true. That's interesting because I think actually for our viewers of this Let's Talk that the Q&A is normally not recorded of the session. So it's good you gave us some of insight of that one.
Exactly.
What else happened in the discussion afterwards, Jan?
What was one additional questions?
One of them was, the last one for Mariano, was when should we do immediate implant placement?
What are the red flags? Why don't we end this talk with underlining those?
Well, he highlighted the presence of a buccal bone wall, or to what extent can we do immediate placement when that wall is damaged? I think today we don't have a clear-cut answer to that. But we see that in the field we are pushing the limits a bit. So it is a bit too early to come with a strong statement in that.
Exactly.
But I would say today that a type 2A socket, which has a deficiency up to 3 millimeters, that's not really a problem because you can secure the stability of the regeneration chamber there. When you go higher up, I think we need to modify the regenerative approach. And we need to think about that, how we can secure that regeneration chamber. But it will not be with the trimodal approach. We need adaptations and we will need a barrier, sometimes a supportive barrier.
Exactly.
But this is what we need to dig into in the next 10 years, I would say.
I completely agree with what you just said.
So that's exciting stuff going ahead. If you two look in the future, we meet again in 10 years at an EAO Congress. What do you hope regarding to this topic? What is future research need to be done on?
I believe that we need to have better bone substitutes in order to make this healing faster for us, because most of this time we have to wait 6 months. And of course, we're going back to the topic of timing. And I believe that have some speed in the healing, that would be good. But I'm not sure if that's possible.
We haven't highlighted the prosthetic part now, but I think that we have a lot of good implant brands. That's not the issue anymore. But we don't have a lot of good prosthetic components in all these brands, unfortunately.
Okay.
And we need, for immediate placement, we need an abutment height of at least 2 millimeters, preferably 2.5. And if you look to the different brands, they don't all fulfill that criterion.
Okay.
Often we see also on Instagram and other platforms, very narrow, short abutments, but they induce marginal bone loss. It's not ideal. They should change that.
Yeah.
Aha. So we have a call for action for research. Perhaps team up with the material scientists, and perhaps we have a whole session on biomaterials in the future. And you say, well, I have a call to action for industry.
Yeah.
We need better.
Well, they have it for permanent abutments, but for the temporary abutments,
exactly.
No, they don't.
They don't.
I completely agree with you.
That's a problem.
I think this session is now going to be clicked on a lot, because all of a sudden industry has an assignment, has work to do, and they can learn and hopefully improve and support this important field of implant dentistry. Helena, Jan, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Gerrit.
Thank you for watching. I hope you're curious now. You can check out the full recording of this session, except the Q&A often, in the Monaco Online platform. Or you can click around to some of the other Let's Talk that we made here in our Monaco Online TV studio with the other chairs of these sessions. And if you heard anything that is of interest, either to you or to someone you know, make sure you share this video.